Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Random Troy Radio, episode 490, coming to you on Monday, July 10th. We're going to talk about the latest in USC football news, including having a discussion about who are the best USC defenders of all time. More so, we're going to put them into a Mount RoTmore, which is our version of a Mount Rushmore discussion. So join us for that and so much more here live on YouTube, as always. And as always, you can follow us over on Twitter. I'm at MichaelCastFS. My co-host Alicia Dorotola is at Penguin of Troy. You can also follow us on Threads now at those two hubs as well. You can follow the show at Reign of Troy as well. Our email address is reignoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, yes, our phone number, we have a phone number again, 818-643-7227. Plug that into your phone right now because it's new and the rant line is officially back. Anyways, I'm your host, Mike Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Dorotola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, we're back after the 4th of July holiday, the end of the half year. We are back and finally have a rant line that's up and operational again.
Which is extremely exciting. I hope everyone floods it with their joy and great cheer of the rant line being back. It means we get to have our fan feedback. We get to hear, all of those clips from the start of the show are from the fans. Those are classic parts of Reign of Troy mythology. So very excited to have it back. We do need to re-coordinate though. We can't do one USC anymore, but we could do 7227.
Well,
together.
We looked up what it means, what our phone number now means, which is again 818-643-7227. Had to go with an 818 area code because the cool area code's extinct, like 310, currently extinct.
See, I'm 818 is my my roots. My roots are in 818.
As a kid, I thought all 800 numbers were toll free. So I thought like 818 meant I didn't know, I didn't realize that was just the Valley thing.
Yeah.
Until I got older. So I just thought that
all of my
it
friends
sounds like 188 blah blah blah.
Yeah, all my friends had 818 numbers growing up. Everyone near us had 818.
Yeah. It's weird. It's a Valley number. But that's where you can reach us. With the rant line, which you guys can call in, ask us your questions to the pod. But it's the rant line. Have a say. Have a say about whatever you want to say. And we will play your call on the air as we do. And during the season, we like to put together a bit of a montage because we get too many calls, we have to figure out a way to get everybody involved. It's the only way to sort of do it. So save that number into your phone, 818-643-7227. And as I was trying to say, we put it into a generator that tells you what the number says. Nothing good. It was like mid scar. It means it's 818 mid scar.
So if we were a South Carolina podcast,
this
would be real good for us. Yeah.
Mid scar.
Yeah.
Sure. Fine. Anyways, this episode, as always, is brought to you by DraftKings. And have you signed up to DraftKings yet? Because if you're a new user, you can receive $150 in bonus bets instantly after following just 3 steps. Create an account, get a deposit, and then wager $5 on any sport. Whether your first wager wins or loses, you'll still receive $150 in bonus bets. All you have to do is use the code Reign of Troy, all one word, Reign of Troy, when you sign up. The best part is using that code Reign of Troy not only gets you the bonus, but also supports the podcast. It helps us out, helps us grow the show, and all of those things. And if you're considering signing up for DraftKings, definitely use the code Reign of Troy, all one word, REIGNOFTROY. That's how you spell Reign of Troy. To maximize your first bets, the offer is available only for new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. California, not a legally gambling state, but like we talked about last time, it's the summer. Everyone's getting their vacations in. You're probably going to be vacationing to a non California state, non-California state, another state, basically, right?
Mhm.
You'll find you go in
Good,
Arizona and
good.
go, you know, put some bills down on whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I'll
And use the
always
promo code.
always responsibly. But yeah, use the promo, get your bets in,
Yeah,
and see what you can win.
yeah. Of course, that helps grow the show and the podcast moving forward. And moving forward, we are super excited because, Alicia, this is the last episode of the off season. At
Ah.
least that's what we're dubbing it.
Well, we calculated the number of weeks until the start of the season and then sort of worked out how many episodes we'd need to get all of our preview stuff good to go for the season. And yeah, we,
This is it.
we're out of time. Yeah, it's
Th-
it's here.
this is it. So big shout out to everyone who's joined us all off season for everything, and a big shout out to everybody in the chat here on YouTube. Kenny, Richard, Dan, Tim, Matthew, Ramamurti, Dave Schwartz is in here. Everybody's in here, and we're super excited to always have you guys as always. And things are just turning up. Not only are we going to start talking to, you know, preview the season coming up, but next week it's going to be something that we've wanted to do for a while now. We got this request. I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember exactly who sent us the request. It might have been an email, a text message, something. I wish I remember exactly who said it, but it was like a previously on Reign of Troy kind of deal. So it's going to be an off-season recap. We're going to recap everything that's gone on, not only in the off-season, but really the last 12 months as sort of like a preseason primer,
Which
which is a way that one of my favorite podcasts, Shift F1, an F1 podcast, does like a preseason primer before the season. It tells you everything you need to know to go into the season. That's what we're going to try to do our version of that next week.
which feels increasingly necessary. Maybe it's because we're getting older and it's harder to retain all of the information.
Mm-hmm.
It also just feels like there is more crap that happens during the off season from the get go.
Yes.
And I was on the Quack 12 podcast a few weeks ago, and we were talking about things, and he was asking about players, and I was like, "Wait, I don't. Did they transfer? Did they not?" I just like keeping it all straight is very, very difficult. So yes, I think we all need a here's what happened last season on USC, and the little pre-show recap that's always very, very useful on a TV show too. Like we've been watching Silo, and it's nice every week to have the little previously on Silo to remind us like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that thing happened, and that thing happened, and that thing happened. So yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a great walk through not only the last 12 months, but especially the off season, like you said. It's the transfer portal, right? Like there's so many different things happen in the transfer portal. We walk through all of that, all of the new faces. So that'll be next week, next Monday night, 5 p.m. on YouTube, as always, July 17th. The following week, we're going to recap what happens at Pac 12 Media Day, Pac 12 Media Day in Vegas this year. We're not going, but we're going to still talk about what goes on there and sort of set the stage for how camp begins. The week after that, last day of July, we're going to talk about the beginning of fall camp, which should be around that time. And then after that, we get into August. First week of August, August 7th, we're going to have our traditional preseason roundtable with our friends. Jake Merrifield of the What's Bruin show, along with Kenny Martin, formerly of Traveler Hates Thursdays, one of our favorite podcasts ever. He's currently in the chat right now. He's awesome. He's the best. Two of our best friends in the world, and we can't wait to talk about the season going into it with those guys. The following week, mid-August, we get into our offensive and defensive previews, and that leads us into game week, 6 weeks from today, August 21st. Season previews. our season predictions. So we get asked all the time, how many wins is SC going to win this year? What's your over under for wins? Can SC go 12-0? Are they going to go 10-2, 11-1, whatever it is? August 21st. August 21st, when we are putting pen to paper on what USC's win-loss predictions are, which will lead us into Wednesday, August 23rd. Alicia, that's when it all begins. The week 0 game preview, USC and San Jose State. So, bunch of podcasts on the horizon. This, of course, is episode 490. Our 500th full episode looms a little bit later in August, and we're looking forward to that, even though it's totally not our 500th episode. It's probably like our 1,000th. Whatever.
Yeah, we made the mistake of not including CarCasts and other things in the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dan is asking if you should buy in-flight Wi-Fi to keep watching. Yes or no?
Of course you should.
Yes. Of course you should. In-flight Wi-Fi is generally, to me, a good deal.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a little puddle jumper thing. Like, yeah, just get the Wi-Fi.
The best part of in-flight Wi-Fi, at least it's like Southwest does it, is you're buying it for the day.
For the whole day, yeah. So if you're like got connections or whatever, yeah.
Anyways, that's what's coming up here on Retro Radio. This our last episode of the off season, sort of. That we're at least that we're talking about it. So, all right, we got some news. Let's get into the news, shall we? The Trojans over the last week have gotten, really the last 2 weeks since we last spoke. The Trojans have gotten 4 new commitments. 4-star safety Marquis Gallegos, 4-star offensive lineman Makai Saina, 3-star corner Braylon Conley, and 3-star defensive lineman David Palipale. It continues really to be the summer of bodies, right? SC getting body after body after body after body in the 2024 recruiting class, the first of the Big Ten era. 17 total commitments for SC. The Trojans now rank 5th in the country in the recruiting class for 2024, just behind Georgia, Ohio State, Florida, and Michigan. 5th in the country, 3rd in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's doing pretty darn well as far as recruiting goes at this stage. The momentum is definitely building. I think the program overall momentum feels very strong, and the waves of recruits that we keep seeing commit over the summer sort of backs that up, that USC is getting the guys that they want. And adding some talent to this roster, which is always good to see.
Mm-hmm.
Continuing to add sort of big bodies too. You look at Saina and Palipale; those are offensive and defensive linemen, positions that USC needs to continue to every single class be stocking up, bringing in guys who are adding size to that mix. And you've got high school kids who are 6'4", 290 in Saina's case. In a 6'3", 305 pounds in Palipale's case. That's great. Like you can't be mad about those. You certainly can't be mad about those. So yeah, keep them coming. In terms of sort of size and ranking and what USC is looking for, recruiting well out of state in particular. Saina and Connolly are both from Texas. Palipale is from Pennsylvania. And then Gallegos is from California. So it's a really nice mix, again, of national and local recruiting. And we're just seeing USC keep plugging the holes and keep climbing up that recruiting chart. And, what was it last year? USC didn't, this last class wasn't ranked particularly highly. From a USC perspective, it was ranked 7th overall, which in 2023 was good, better than 2021, but better than 2022, better than 2021. So again, momentum's moving up there, but being top 5, is big, especially when I guess the next sort of hurdle in terms of recruiting is concerned for USC is to, snag a 5-star or 2. You look at what Georgia and Ohio State and Florida have done by getting, multiple 5 stars. That's the only area where you wanna see USC, uh, sort of take some strides, but also you have 20, bring in 20 plus kids every year. The guys that USC is bringing in right now are filling those roles, and now they have to just stay in line with the 5-star guys that they're pursuing, and we'll see how those go.
Yeah, it's things are definitely coming together for SC. You talk about the 5-star guys. Yeah, you want to have a bunch of 5 stars at the top of your class, but you also just you want to have a bunch of solid players in there, and I think SC is sort of doing that with so many a wealth of 4 stars currently in the class. They're going to be in the mix next week for Taylor Tatum, the number one running back in the country, at a Longview, Texas. Picking between SC and Oklahoma. 2 worlds different of programs, if you talk about Twitter, of course.
Mhm.
Um, and he's going to be deciding next Monday. So we'll talk about him next Monday, whether or not he picks the Trojans to be, uh, you know, sort of that anchor at the running back position. But yeah, the way everything is coming in the recruiting side of things looks good, and it continues to sort of look good as it does for Lincoln Riley. Um, One of the big gets in the 2023 class was Deuce Robinson, the 5-star tight end that SC got from Pinnacle High in Phoenix. He is currently one of the prospects in the baseball draft, the MLB draft, looking to get drafted there, but through the 10th round currently, undrafted so far.
Yeah, that's a good thing for USC. If he had gone on like the first day, so the draft is weird. They're doing it over 3 days, and sorry, Sunday was day one, Monday was day two, and then I think they're going to wrap things up on Tuesday. Um, they If he had gone on day one or even day two, I think there would have been a not zero chance that he might decide to just go that route.
Sure.
The fact that he's waiting for day 3 and may also just not get drafted at all means that, the arrows are pointing towards him coming to USC, fulfilling that football commitment, which is really what matters from the USC perspective here. Like, I get it if he wants to play baseball, I'm not gonna hold that against him or anything like that, but from the USC perspective, it's like him not getting a really potentially lucrative, draft slot.
Hmm.
Just I mean, if you want to see him play football, then this is a good thing. Like, I'm sorry
Yeah,
about the baseball thing, but this is a good thing for USC football in the long run.
yeah. 100%. And you look at the MLB draft, and usually the way it works is that guys who are committed to colleges sometimes tend to go be an overslot pick, and because the way the draft works, every position has a slotted value, and then you're allowed. The worst person to explain this in the world, but like you're allowed a certain amount of money that you can spend, and you can sometimes pay more money to go over slots, and your over slot guys are the ones that you're trying to really encourage to spur their college commitment, right? And someone could have basically overdrafted, taken a reach on Deuce Robinson, drafted him earlier to pay him more money, and that could have persuaded him to go pro. But at this point, doesn't look like that's going to be the case, like you said. So that bodes well for SC. We'll obviously see what happens with the baseball side of things when he gets on campus, plays baseball, and maybe he gets drafted that way 3 years from now after spending 3 years in college. We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see how all of that comes to be. The other news to sort of touch on a social media post from Eric Gentry. Alicia, you wanted to bring this one up because this is something that we've been asked in the chat before, here live on YouTube. People have sort of always talked about this in the last year, and it's Eric Gentry's size, his shape. all of that. And he tweeted out on the 9th, which is Sunday, a couple of pictures, and it says, "And stop asking if I gained weight. I gained 23 pounds since January," with a crying, laughing emoji.
Yeah. I, uh I just think it's funny that he's addressing it in this way because clearly, like, he's just been asked over and over and over and over again. And yeah, one of the big I mean, to be honest, one of the big questions that we have had when looking at this roster for next year, particularly at the linebacker spot, I think we all agree that it's fun to watch Eric Gentry play
Yeah.
linebacker. Like, we all had fun watching him, and it sucked when he got injured, and that
Mhm.
was clearly, an issue for USC's defense overall. But at the same time, we've looked at his body, at his size, and wondered if that was the right position for him. If it made sense for him to play linebacker, if he could sustain that role, did he need to move to I mean, he sort of doesn't fit the mold, and so too tall, not thick enough. All of these
Well,
questions. Even when he was playing, he
I
looked
don't
like
know
he
he
just
fits
had.
the mold of anything.
He doesn't
Like,
fit the
like
mold of
it's
anything, and that's the problem.
right.
But at the same time, you'd watch him play, and I think it was pretty obvious he had chicken legs, and he did look like he was prone to getting overpowered at times, and it was certainly a major concern about his long term future at an inside linebacker position. If he was going to get exposed in run defense or in those sort of um, size questions, being able to hold up, against bigger guys that are trying to block him. Um, the fact that he says that he's added 23 pounds is kind of feels like a big deal. Last year, he played at 6'6", 200 pounds. To put that into perspective, tight end Jude Wolf, who, you could expect Eric Gentry to have to go head to head with tight ends of similar size.
Mhm.
Jude Wolf was 6'6", 245. So,
Yeah.
like, he's 45 pounds lighter than the player sort of across the line of scrimmage at him.
Mhm.
If we are doing simple math here and saying that he played at 200 pounds last year, and in January, we presume he was 200 pounds, and then he's put on 23 pounds of weight, then maybe his playing weight this year is going to be closer to 225. That certainly sounds like a potential improvement, assuming he hasn't lost his speed along the way. Um, at the same time, like, we don't know. He was injured. He might have lost weight and be starting from like 290, and so then he's going to show up and be like 210 or 215. We don't know exactly what he's going to show up to fall camp
Yeah.
at, what he's going to be listed in the on the roster as, but it certainly doesn't hurt matters to hear that a linebacker has put on that kind of weight, when he needed to put on that kind of weight.
Yeah, like I'm of two minds here. One of them, yeah, I hear everything you're saying and I'm with you. Like you don't want him to get pushed off the ball. You want him to be able to be physical and be able to have some wear and tear and all those things. At the same time, one of the frustrating bits of football is these preconceptions which come from you know come from sound logic. So I'm not saying that these are wrong, but these preconceived conceptions of like what a linebacker looks like physically, how they are built, what a safety looks like, what a defensive end looks like, and all these things. Because we know Eric Gentry is a heck of a football player, right? But when I say that he doesn't match what people have like earmarked to be the physical standards of all these different positions, like that sucks, right? Like he clearly is someone who is a worthy football player of being on the field and all these things, to be just limited to like it's a limiting factor, right? Like, and it sucks when it ends up sort of being something that can take away from people's careers. You think of the guys who have been sort of tweeners in the past, Dion Bailey. Sewer Cravens, these guys who couldn't really find the right position for them. Like that sucks that football ends up being that way. And you hope that Eric Gentry can find a place that can, be this position where he thrives not only in college but in beyond as well. So we'll see what comes of that. Obviously, any news is good news for USC on the defensive front. When you look at coming off of last year and all the struggles there, and especially with Eric Gentry out in the second half of the season, which was a huge, 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 huge red flag for USC. But let's talk about the defense a little bit more. At large, the USC defense, all time, is our thoughts when going into Mount RoTmore. Mount RoTmore has been an ongoing series we've been putting together this offseason where we talk about the Mount Rushmore of a certain thing in USC football history or whatever it is that we're going to discuss on the pod. We're doing defensive players, Alicia. The Mount RoTmore of USC defensive players. What are your thoughts? Where do you start?
It was hard enough picking a Mount RoTmore of like wide receivers, and that was one position on offense.
I think this one's going to be a lot harder.
I think this is extremely difficult to pare down the wealth of USC history on the defensive side of the ball to just 4 players.
Yes.
It just every group of 4 I think about feels like I'm still leaving people off, and I don't. I just think it's really, really tough. You and I, before we started talking, we haven't discussed any names or anything like that, but we had both said that like immediately 1 or 2 guys come to mind. Maybe even 3 of the 4 are just locked in stone, and there's no, and there's maybe no debate on that front. But I'm curious if we are thinking of the same people when we're talking about that.
So I think there's a name that has to be 100% here, and it's Ronnie Lott.
Yes.
College Football Hall of Famer.
Ronnie Lott is
Pro Football Hall of Famer. Pac-12 All-Century Team, all those things, right? Like, Ronnie Lott is that guy. He thoroughly belongs. Like, he is everything, right?
Yes.
All-American 1980. Like, he is the guy. He's, when you think about the all-time greatest safeties in the history of the game, Ronnie Lott is the first thing that comes up.
Yes.
Like, in the history of the game, not just SC, he's transcends
NFL, college,
all of those things.
All of the above. Yeah.
And we talked about it with receivers, about Lynn Swann and Lynn Swann being that guy for the receivers. But the difference is with the receiver, like Lynn Swann has the celebrity of Ronnie Lott, but Ronnie Lott has even more of that celebrity side of it. But also, nobody is thinking that Lynn Swann is the greatest receiver of all time.
Yeah.
Because the game has just changed so much, right? Like,
yeah.
At the time, you could have thought that in the 70s when he's making that catch against the Cowboys at the Orange Bowl. Like, yeah, you could have said that in the 70s, but with Ronnie Lott, like, people are still saying that he could be the greatest defensive player ever today. Like, and so that you can say that everyone knows Ronnie Lott is that he's just that ubiquitous. Like, you have to include him here. You have to. He's a no-brainer. He's here.
Yes, Ronnie. I think that Ronnie Lott is absolutely not a question.
Yeah, Malcolm in the chat says no one thinks Swann is in Lott's tier. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, Lott is on a tier that's above everybody else.
When we discussed Lynn Swann, that was about taking historical context and all of that kind of stuff into account and sort of trying to understand the changing tenor of the game and all of that, like all of those kinds of things where it's all about context. You don't need context for Ronnie Lott. Ronnie Lott just is the GOAT. When we're
his
discussing,
legacy has not changed.
No. I think that the others that we discuss will need context,
See, I'm
NFL questions, cultural questions, sort of fame and value and all of those kinds of things where that gets a little bit
yes,
more tricky.
yes. When we talk about rounding it out to 4, yes.
Yes.
When we're talking about who the other obvious guy is, no, it's Troy Polamalu.
Yes.
USC Glenn in the chat says no one has mentioned Troy Polamalu.
Well, we were
I'm
about
mentioning
to.
him here. He is the other guy. Ronnie
Yes.
Lott thoroughly in here, already put him in stone. He's on the Mount RoTmore, and so should Troy Polamalu.
What I like
College
about
Football Hall of Famer, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Pac-12 All Century guy, like All American. He is the modern equivalent. You talk about the
yeah.
one of the best football players in the last 20 years. He's on everybody's list.
Yes, and I think that's what I kind of like about the balance between talking about the first two guys that we discuss on this route more being Ronnie Lott and Troy Polamalu is they are of different eras, but
Yes.
but of similar stature.
100%. Yeah.
Um, he, Troy, like in my sort of lifetime of viewing football, of knowing football, of seeing things with my own eyes, like Troy Polamalu is that guy. The incredible thing
Mhm.
about Troy Polamalu is that to me, it felt like he transcended position.
Yeah.
He
Well,
was
we were just
just,
talking about tweeners, right? Like
yeah,
he's someone who could have played linebacker. He like in a lot of ways you could argue he was a linebacker playing safety, right?
well, he played the position at the line of scrimmage with that kind of
Mhm.
sort of approach and ferocity. Um, Iconicness sort of also comes into play with Troy because the hair, the mystique, the sort of the dichotomy between the way that he played on the field and then like seeing him in interviews and how soft spoken he is and sort of that back and forth, like all of that is just it. Troy is iconic. Troy Polamalu is iconic. You can't
Yes.
not have him on the Mount Rushmore of USC defenders because of it.
Mhm.
And I think there's now a discussion in the chat about like Junior Seau. Junior Seau is one of those guys who I think is a little bit more complicated because there's a level of mystique to Junior Seau. There's a level of like iconicness to Junior Seau that that is a little bit harder to place within sort of USC lore because like if not for the 55 of it all, where would like is Junior in this Rushmore because of 55? And if you took that away, um where does he land? I think it gets a little bit more complicated than with Troy Polamalu, who I think um is just cut and dry to me, at least. I don't know if you sort of agree with my assessment there or not.
Well, so I like to talk about the difference between best and greatest because they're two different things, right? Like you can have someone who's the best and you can have someone who's the greatest. They don't have to be the same thing, right? Like everyone says that the not every, I guess not everyone, but a lot of people agree on whatever Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, right?
Yeah, that doesn't make him the best
Doesn't make him
quarterback.
the best. And
Yeah.
why does it not make him the best? Because to me, the best is a one game scenario, a one season thing. Who are you going to have? That's your best guy. Like, that's your peak of the powers guy. Doesn't necessarily make you the greatest. Greatest is your legacy, everything that you have accomplished, the long term longevity, all of those things. And I think you have to look at this when you're talking about USC. Yes, multiple seasons of greatness I think helps here. Um, Malcolm in the chat says that Junior doesn't have the production because he only had 1 year. I would argue it doesn't matter because you look at Junior Seau. Let's talk about him. He had peak of his powers, probably the greatest one single season in the history of USC football on defense. 27 tackles for loss. He had like a billion sacks. Like at the same time that he was playing with a defense that had Tim Ryan, a two-time All-American on the defensive line in front of him, he was incredible. He is all over USC's record books to this day. And then turns around and his he was such an iconic player that his number then became a thing that was passed down over and over and over again. And we've talked about this before, that it sucks that the unfortunate loss of Junior has sort of taken away a lot of the ability for SC to bestow the 55 on everybody else because of this fear that they could, you know, not live up to the mystique of Junior Seau. But the whole thing about the number 55 is that he gave it to Willie McGinnis, and then Willie McGinnis handed it on, and it just kept getting handed on to someone who could live up to the hype, and some didn't, and some did, and like that was the whole point of the thing. And to be able to start that tradition, I think is absolutely a quality that you want of someone on your Mount Rushmore. And so we can look at all the accolades, and no, Junior Seau currently not in the College Football Hall of Fame. He didn't win an award. He didn't win the Bednarik. He didn't win the Butkus or any of those things. But he was an All American. He was Pac-12 All Century Team, Pro Football Hall of Famer. And I think when you talk about iconic players in USC football history, he's one of the top 2 or 3 guys that people mention.
Mhm.
You look at jerseys that you see at games to this day, it's Reggie and it's the 55. And why is the 55 there? Because of of what Seau was able to start. I think he has to be on this thing.
I when we were talking about the 3 obvious and like that when we were having that discussion, my immediate reaction when we said we're going to do a Rushmore of all-time USC defenders,
Mhm.
my immediate reaction was Ronnie Lott, Troy Polamalu, Junior Seau.
Yeah.
That was it was like a why even do it, because it's just those 3 guys and then we just have to debate the last one and that's going to be painful and all of that kind of stuff. So I 100% agree with you. Looking through some of the numbers, I have 2 thoughts. Number 1, is he eligible for the Hall of Fame, for the College Football Hall of Fame? Because the Hall of Fame has stupid rules about being selected by a correct all you have to be an All-American and you have to have been selected by um one of the approved selectors, and I can't remember if Sporting News is
Sporting News is one of the 5, but I think that
okay. Then
do,
he
do you not have to be consensus or whatever?
I think you just have to have one. You don't have to be consensus or unanimous or anything like that. You just have to have one of the major selectors select you. But I was
we've
even
talked
looking
about
at like
before that the
how was he not an All-American? Like a consensus All-American, and
well
it's wild, but yeah.
it he is on the wall. He was listed as an All American by one outlet according to the USA Media Guide. But it's one of those things where I this is what is frustrating about the College Football Hall of Fame. We've discussed it before, of these little rules. Like Pete
Yeah.
Carroll is ineligible for the College Football Hall of Fame because he only coached 9 years and you need 10. Like it's ridiculous, right? Like it's ridiculous that these things sort of exist that way. And we've talked about it before that going on decades from now, when kids who were like us when we were growing up and reading the USC media guys because we were nerds, and learning about players, one of the ways you learn about players is by seeing their picture in the media guide. You get a picture in the media guide when you win an award, when you do this thing or that thing that is exceptional from everybody else. And there's some guys who just don't get those accolades, and then they end up sort of being lost. One of those guys is Stuart Cravens. Stuart
Mhm.
Craven's never an All American because he was like a 3rd team All American like two times, right? Like
Yeah.
that sucks because he didn't get on the wall. He didn't get on the All American wall, and like you can't talk about him going forward in the same way as the other guys, even if he was so damn good that he belongs in a lot of these sort of discussions. He also played on a team that wasn't as good as the other teams that have been played, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so it makes it difficult to put those things in perspective there.
Yes. Huge shout out to Alex in the chat.
Yeah.
Alex, my dude.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
A big shout out for the old super chat or
Yeah.
whatever
I was gonna
YouTube
ask, is
calls
that
it.
a super chat, or does I don't know what it's called.
It's called thank you.
It's called the big O thumbs up.
It's called Alex is the best.
We love you, Alex. You're the number one robot. Declared.
There you go.
But yeah, yes, I agree.
Is Alex on the Mount RoTmore now? I
Is
think so.
Alex is on
Yeah.
the Mount RoTmore. No, one thing I'd wanted to point out too is that the thing is, again, we mentioned this with the wide receivers. We're not naming the top 5 USC defenders of all time. We're not doing a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
We're doing a RoTmore, which the 4 presidents who appear on Mount Rushmore are not the greatest presidents in the history of America. Like that's I don't view it as that. I think there's sort of historical significance that comes into play for different things. So in that sense, I think that Junior Seau historically is significant to the history of USC football on the defensive side of the ball.
You know what it is? I think the idea of the Mount Rushmore is like these are the guys you send to the aliens to to tell them about USC defenders, right? Like who are the 4 guys that you want to send to the aliens to show that like these are what SC is about, right? Ronnie Lott, Troy Polamalu, and Junior Seau are on that list. Like they just are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you could make the case for someone like Sua Cravens being, or like Taylor Mays or one of those guys being like more athletic or more individually gifted, or
Sure.
any of those things, but it doesn't sort of also, it doesn't necessarily come down to that.
Yeah.
So that's
this stuff is sort of all encompassing that way.
Right, but if we agree, and this is where I was like, if I have to make room for somebody, when we're talking, we agree on 3: Ronnie Lott, Troy Polamalu, Junior Seau. You only have room for 1 more, and that 1 more I think is impossible to fill, because now you're talking, Malcolm in the chat said, Chris Claiborne was a better linebacker than Junior Seau at USC. That might, I think you can certainly make that argument. We could say that Leonard Williams was if you're not going to have representation from the defensive line, then you're also not telling the story of the USC defense to the aliens for what it's worth. When you're talking about like guys like I think that Talanoa Hufanga, in 10 years, it's entirely possible we talk about Talanoa the way we talk about Troy Polamalu. Like,
well, I mean, the interesting thing there, like, yeah, it's possible given that his NFL career started off pretty damn well, right? But
yeah,
I think it's telling when you have a player and then you end up comparing them to them, because that's what we've sort of done with you look at the wide receivers. Everyone gets compared to all the big dudes get compared to Mike Williams. All of the pass catching speed guys get compared to Robert Woods and Marquise Lee, which inherently means that those are your Rushmore types, right? Like those are the guys that you were sort of looking up to be the bastion of like what the standard is, right? For what you want out of your receivers. And it's kind of like what the Mount Rushmore thing is. And so yeah, when you look at it that way, we might end up talking about 10 years from now, instead of using Troy Polamalu as the measuring stick, we use Talanoa Hufanga, maybe. But also when we were talking about Hufanga, we were measuring him against Troy Polamalu. Like that's just how it is. So when we talk about the final spot, I want to throw I want to throw all the names out here that I wrote down as potential discussion points.
Okay.
So there's only one other college football Hall of Famer that we could talk about. That's Richard Wood, USC's first 3-time All-American. The only reason he wasn't a 4-time All-American is because he wasn't allowed to play college football as a true freshman because he was unfortunately the last class ever that had banned freshmen in 1971. So bummer for Richard Wood.
And I think Richard Batman Wood, by the
Yes.
way, would be a fine fourth. If you're
Yes.
talking about just pure, if you're gonna say like the problem for Seau is it's one season.
Mm-hmm. Can't
Richard,
say that about
Richard
Batman
Wood was
no.
amazing from the moment he stepped foot on USC's campus
Leader in
to the
two
moment he
championship
left it.
teams.
Yes, won championships, won individual awards, team awards, etc. Like I think that you can absolutely declare Richard Wood the most decorated, one of the four certainly most decorated captain on national championship teams, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Defenders that USC has ever had. I think that I will I would make a case that Richard Wood almost has to be on this list because of that, because he just he he had too much success.
Right.
He had too much success
Con,
the
though.
entire way through. He was the first 3-time All-American at USC. He was
There's only 3 of them.
And there's only 3 of them.
We'll talk about another one in a couple minutes.
Yes. I like I think it's hard to leave him off. I agree. I would say.
Here's the con. Again, when we talk about the Mount Rushmore, I think these guys have to be widely known. And
yeah,
this,
he's not
I
iconic.
think if you're a diehard USC fan, you know Batman Wood. Do the kids today know who Richard Batman Wood is? No,
Absolutely
I don't think
not.
They do. And I think that's a shame.
The only reason I know about him
sucks.
is because I'm a history nerd who researches all of this kind of stuff and has spent the last 2 decades writing about players at USC and all of that. So
I think if you're someone who played 50 years ago, you have to have this iconic, like, timeless quality to you. And unfortunately, I don't think Richard Wood has that in comparison to, say, Ronnie Lott.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of the NFL success. And I understand that that's completely unfair when we're talking about the USC side of things.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about, like, the guys that SC will paint a picture of on a mural, they're going to be painting Ronnie Lott before they paint Richard Wood.
Yes.
Guys are on the Pac-12 All-Century team to mention. We talked about Willie McGinnis. He's someone who could be talked about there. Chris Claiborne, the 1998 Butkus Award winner. Joey Browner. Mark Carrier, the 1988 Thorpe winner. And Leonard Williams, who, for my money, is the greatest USC defensive lineman of all time.
Okay. Leonard Williams is the most impressive defensive lineman that I have ever seen.
And before him, it was Cedric Ellis.
And that's what I like. The issue, the thing about Leonard Williams is, again, he falls into a difficulty because, like, if he had played on those Pete Carroll teams, he would probably be perceived differently.
Yes.
Cedric Ellis was, a defensive player of the year, 2-time Morris Award winner. Like, I think Cedric Ellis more decorated certainly than Leonard Williams, but I watched both of them play. And, so I can say, at least to my point, in my opinion, no defensive lineman that I have seen play football at USC has been more impressive on an individual level than Leonard Williams was.
You talk about the Hufanga thing and how, like, maybe Hufanga becomes the measuring stick.
Yeah.
I think Leonard Williams is the perfect example of it was Cedric Ellis. Cedric Ellis was the guy where everyone after him was going to be judged by him, and then Leonard Williams came, and you're like, he's surpassed. He has surpassed Cedric Ellis, so now he is the measuring stick.
Yeah.
And it's also wild to me that SC has had all these Hall of Famers, all these All-Americans, and all this stuff, and Leonard Williams is like, it seems like recency bias. But when you look at all the great defensive linemen in USC history, Leonard Williams is the guy. Like, he just is the guy. But Joey Browner, I wouldn't argue to be on Mount Rushmore. Mark Carrier, I think, could be. He won the Thorpe. Chris Claiborne won the Butkus, like we talked about, could be there. Other award winners to discuss: Georgia Chica won the Morris in '82. The late Darrell Russell won the Morris in '96. Ray Maluga won the Big Neric and was the Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year in 2008 on one of the greatest USC defenses of all time in 2008. Dory Jackson, one of the all-time greatest Trojans ever, the 2016 Thorpe Award winner. And then we talked about Hufanga, who is the 2020 Polynesian College Football Player of the Year in 2020 and the 2020 Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of these guys get into the difficulty of judging eras. You talk about, like, I think Cedric Ellis is more accessible to me because I watched him play, but
Sure.
I've read about Darrell Russell and how
He was incredible.
what a monster he was on the defensive line. I saw Adore Jackson with my own eyes. Arguably the greatest athlete.
Here's the problem with Adore. I
Adore's,
love Adore. He's not
a defender
on a defensive thing because he was too good at everything. And I think that he's one of those players who was so good at everything that, like, I don't think being a defender was his ultimate forte.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on him.
No.
It's just that he was so good at everything else. Like, I don't think defensive Mount RoTmore is where you put him.
It's also tough with corners and all. Yeah, but I agree. I don't think he goes on this RoTmore. I think he might go on a different, if we framed it differently.
Can we talk about Maluga? Though,
well, there was some debate in the chat about Maluga, and I think it's all very fair. He won a national award. He was absolutely dominant on a dominant USC defense. I think that, Kenny in the chat said that the official Mount Rushmore website says that it's the 4 represented the most important events in the history of the U.S. And so if sort of we take it, again, going back to, these aren't the best presidents, these are just like historically important presidents.
Right.
I think that there is an argument to say there needs to be a representative from the 2008 defense. I think that's a fair thing to say.
That's fair.
I personally wouldn't go that direction because I think the 2008 defense was the whole, the greatest USC defense that I've ever seen in with my own 2 eyes. And Ray Maluga was linchpin on that defense, but also I think to a man, every single player on that defense was special and elite. And I don't know that Ray Maluga was so much better than anybody else on that defense.
My thought. Like and this isn't a knock on Ray Maluga.
No,
but like,
great player, but
was like, you could have given all those accolades that he got to Brian Cushing.
Yes,
you could have given all those accolades that he got. To Taylor Mays. You could have given
Kevin
them
Ellison,
all to Cedric
Clay
Ellis,
Matthews,
who was not on that 2018, but on the 2 years before.
The lead up, yeah.
And so was Keith Rivers, and like, I don't know, like
was Jarrell Casey before or after Cedric Ellis? So Jarrell Casey was on that.
Yeah. This is I think that there's definitely an argument to have Ray Maluga there. I don't think that he's the argument that I would make.
Yeah.
But I understand why people would. Other guys who did not win awards.
I have one thing to say, more thing to say about the group of people that we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already talked about him, but Talanoa Hufanga. I think that Hufanga, to me, is the other side of the coin, or is running in parallel to my perception of Drake London.
Yeah.
It is very hard to pick their place in USC history because of the Helton of it all, the injuries of it all, the sort of just the era that they played in.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking about like Ray Maluga and that 2008 defense being just everybody really good, and so how do you elevate Ray Maluga above the rest necessarily? Like, I think that Talanoa Hufanga on a different level of pure individual achievement, it really can't be beat. That's sort of my perspective on Talanoa Hufanga, and I don't like having to factor in NFL success into the way that we judge players, but I really want Talanoa Hufanga to have a very rich NFL career so that
Right.
he doesn't end, because I think this is the Sua
Well,
Cravens of it all.
I
Sua's bound to be lost to the annals of history because his NFL career didn't help keep him afloat, his name afloat in terms of importance at USC.
yeah, like it's to me, it's not about the NFL career like being what puts you over because of like it's not that you need to be good in the NFL. I think having a lasting legacy is the thing, and the NFL career is what allows those legacies to continue, right? Because Ronnie Lott was a nobody. Unfortunately, this sucks to say, but if he was a nobody in the NFL, like he probably isn't on the Mount Rushmore.
Troy Polamalu, same thing. I think that Troy um, isn't seen the same way. He's more in that group of like these guys won awards and were all Americans level,
Right.
but not like
You,
um
it's the sucky side of these things, but
yeah.
it's just the way that it is. Unfortunately,
Whereas like
especially
Richard Woods' USC career stands on its own, but without that NFL that sort of like NFL Hall of Fame legacy,
mhm.
which I don't think Richard Wood had a bad NFL career.
But he's not in the Hall of Fame. That's the thing. And when you're on a when you were trying
Yeah, he
to
just
split hairs about the legacy of players, it unfortunately helps that Ronnie Lott and Junior Seau are in the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's because it allows kids these days to know who they are, and
yeah.
um, I think that's another reason about the Mount Rushmore, right? Like going back to what Kenny was talking about the Mount Rushmore, the important times in history, but also the presidents on the Mount Rushmore, you all know because yes, they were presidents or important times in history, but you all know things that they did. Millard Fillmore is not on the Mount Rushmore. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he James Monroe did a lot of things. We can argue about good or bad. Is that's a whole different podcast. But like he did a lot of things. He's not on the Mount Rushmore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's just the okay. Other notable players to talk about on defense really quick. Mike McKeever, All American 1959. Damon Bame, two-time All-American at linebacker in the 60s. Adrian Young, an All-American on the 1967 team that won the national title. Dennis Thurman, two-time All-American in the mid-70s. Tim McDonald, two-time All-American in the mid-80s. Tim Ryan played with Junior Seau and was a two-time All-American. He put up crazy numbers. We talk about the production that Junior Seau did.
Tim Ryan.
He led the team in tackles for loss over Junior Seau, which
Yeah.
is nuts.
Yeah.
Matt Grudegood, All American 2004, one of the greatest players that I've ever seen in my life play. There was a message in the chat from Tim in LA that says Matt Grudegood needs his flowers. Leinart said he's the best high school player he ever saw. I went to a rival and I agree. He was a great, great Trojan. Thoroughly agree.
Yeah.
He deserves a shout in this tenfold. And luckily, unlike Stuart Cravens, he was named an All American, and we get to he's
He's on the
imprinted,
wall
right?
and
Like he's
yeah.
on the wall. Like he will be remembered for generations to come because of that, right?
Yeah.
Taylor Mays, the three-time All-American, the only other defender along with Richard Batman Wood to be a three-time All-American. The other guy on offense is Sam Baker, who did it at the same time that Taylor Mays did it, and then Stuart Cravens, who we talked about, who third team All American.
Which is why I mean, just think about
because
how arbitrary this crap is. Jack Jones was the third team All American.
Right.
It's not the same. Like
it's not the same.
I don't want to like romanticize the Sua of it all, but he was that level of outstanding for USC.
Yes.
Just he like Talanoa, like a few other guys, he's one of those guys where you put him on any good USC defense and he is the best player on that defense. So
yeah, 100%. Okay, so we got to just pick a dude. So it's Ronnie Lott, it's Troy Polamalu, it's Junior Seau. Who's the other guy? Is it McGinnis? Is it Claiborne? Is it Carrier?
I've got one thing to say. Mike
Aluga?
McKeever, John McKay called him the best defender that he had ever coached at USC. So like that's some really high praise for Mike McKeever, who is one of the. I mean, like the Mike McKeever's story is really sad because he and his brother were both All Americans at USC. Had great potential as football players. And he tragically had blood clots that ended his career in college. And he was so good at USC that he got drafted into the NFL despite his career being ended by those blood clots and the need to have surgery and all that kind of stuff. A team drafted him just in case he got cleared, um, because they thought he's so good that like if he happens to to be able to play football, we want to have the rights to him. And then sadly he passed in a car crash. But um, you know, one of the bigger what ifs of the sort of all time greats that USC has had is Mike McKeever. But just to share that as the resident USC historian.
Yeah, it's he's someone that needs a shout here. I talked about Adrian Young. Adrian Young has the USC record for interceptions in a game.
Yeah.
For the linebacker spot. So like he's someone that could be here. There's so many.
And he did that against Notre Dame, right?
Against your alma mater in '67.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is difficult.
I have an answer.
Okay. What are you doing?
I think the answer, the correct answer in my view,
okay,
is Ronnie Lott, Troy Polamalu, Junior Seau, and Richard Wood. My personal, as a kid born in 1989 who didn't start watching football until 2002 at the earliest, it's Ronnie Lott, Troy Polamalu, Junior Seau, and Leonard Williams. And that is just because I am using Leonard Williams as the representative of all of the greatest of the great individual Trojans who were dominant on their day at USC, who didn't have the fortune of playing on a really, really good USC football team that was competing for national titles.
I think that's valid to the point that I think that's where I am. And I know that some people might not like that. Yeah, he didn't win a Rose Bowl and he didn't do those kind of things, but
I don't think it was for lack of trying.
No,
in Leonard Williams's case and in a few others, I will go to my grave saying that if you put Leonard Williams on the 2008 USC defense, I still think he is the best player on that football field.
I agree. And that 2008 defense, by the way, like Ray Maualuga's the only name here. Maualuga and Taylor Mays are the only name here that I have listed in all the names that we could discuss. But Brian Cushing deserves a shout. My favorite player on that defense, Kevin Ellison.
Good old Kevin Ellison.
Deserves a shout. Rest in peace. Like, there was a bunch of dudes.
Kevin Ellison single-handedly undercuts Taylor Mays' greatness in my eyes.
Yes.
Taylor Mays on paper is one of the greatest USC players to ever play football. The problem is that I watch those teams and I know that if I had handed out an All-American vote, Kevin Ellison would have gotten it.
Yeah, Kevin Ellison was the dude. Kevin Ellison allowed Taylor Mays to be the star on that defense.
Yeah.
And you kind of really saw it in 2009 when Taylor Mays was sort of the only guy left on that defense.
Yeah.
But I am going to go with you and go with Leonard Williams for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that it should be representation on the defensive line. Number two, I think it's hard to pick any of the other 55s because I think that as much as we can say that Claiborne and Willie McGinnis and
it works as a representative of the 55.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Another one.
Yeah.
I'm saying another one.
Yeah.
And Keith Rivers, like you can put all those guys in here, but I like the idea of like different eras and different things.
You've got the 70s covered with Ronnie Lott.
We've got a Pete Carroll.
We've got a Pete Carroll
in Polamalu.
We've got a modern post Pete Carroll
and
and
Leonard Williams.
we've got Seo.
We got Junior Seau, who's the guy we grew up watching, the guy everyone remembers, and he started his own legacy number.
Yeah.
And then you have Ronnie Lott, who is just the greatest defensive player in SC history in terms of status, right?
Yeah.
Like that,
Yeah.
he is. So I think that all four of those dudes, you can't go wrong. Malcolm in the chat says that Claiborne better than Leonard Williams. Sure, I don't necessarily disagree. Different positions, but also the Mount Rushmore isn't about the best.
Yeah.
So it's not about just the best.
And I prefaced the Leonard Williams thing with like Leonard Williams was in my heyday of sort of watching, understanding, comprehending football.
Sure. All right, let's get to the mailbag really quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
You've got mail.
All right. We got a question from Rama Murdy. Any thoughts on the Northwestern scandal? The news today that Pat Fitzgerald removed his head coach over at soon-to-be conference rival Northwestern, amid a bunch of scandals about general horrendous toxicity within the program, allegations of hazing, racism, favoritism, all those isms.
Yeah. My thoughts are this. Number one, hazing is bad. It is always bad, especially when it's weirdly sexualized. I don't get it. I am an extremely empathetic person. You might say at times overly empathetic.
Sure.
But I would rather be the kind of empathetic person who cannot fathom the idea of participating in hazing.
It's ridiculous.
I don't see the team building aspect to it. I don't see the interpersonal relationship. All I see is abuse, and hazing is just a word we use to maybe try to come to terms with what is essentially abuse.
Yeah.
There's no way around that to me. So that sucks, and it sucks that anyone gets put through that. And I know that this goes on beyond Northwestern. We've seen this at many, many other places. I'm sure it goes on currently in other places, and that sucks because to me, I can't fathom participating in it, to be honest, to be perfectly honest. So it's not that I don't understand why people engage in it. I just can't fathom putting aside the humanity of another person to the degree that would allow you to, even in a humorous approach to it.
Right. I will be shorter here. I don't think we need to talk about this stuff in the sense of this stuff is awful. That's all we need to say. Like, it's awful. Like, it's horrendous. And anyone like tied to those allegations, it's got to go. Like, it's just, there's zero tolerance. I don't think we need to like
Northwestern could not.
Like, it was horrible.
No.
And if those things are, I thought Northwestern handled this perfectly. They suspended him. They did their investigation. They found out 11 players.
Well, okay, Northwestern did it out of order a little bit.
Sure, but I'm talking about
they did an investigation. They suspended him, and then people found out more about what was going on, and then they were like, "Oh, wait, people are really mad about this."
But
at least they did the.
I'm talking about like just in the most macro sense possible, right? Like he's gone. He couldn't go another day with the school newspaper continuing to break all these things. And so all of them are vile. And if your investigation has 11 different players corroborating the thing, game over. It's done. The football side of things for Northwestern sucks too, because what are they supposed to do? Well, Pete Thamel from wherever he is, ESPN now, tweeted out while we're recording that they're expected to name defensive coordinator David Braun as the acting coach. Braun came to Northwestern in January from North Dakota State. If he's not tied to everything else, good. But I think it's very difficult to make an internal, like, interim promotion when you have internal toxicity, right? Like, that's very difficult, especially with all the teams in college football
But
3 weeks away from the start of camp. Like, it's a
yeah, it's also a coaching staff that oversaw 1-11 season last year, so it's not like you're going to have a lot of
yeah,
inspiration about interim promoting one of the offensive or defensive coordinator in that situation. It's a terrible situation for literally everybody involved, from the human perspective to the football perspective. It sucks, and but also it was necessary. I'm sorry. Don't don't encourage that kind of behavior
no,
don't encourage or even look the other way from that kind of behavior. Either
right.
way, that's not befitting a major
And
college
it
football
sucks when
coach.
it's Pat Fitzgerald, someone that we all put on a pedestal and thought he
Yeah.
was a great coach
Yeah.
and a great person and all that
Yeah, but
stuff. So
inaction is the easiest sin. It's why I believe that
yeah,
the things have gone down the way that they did, because I think that we are all capable of that, and it's a good reminder too that um inaction doesn't absolve you of you know not living up to to your own sort of personal moral expectations. But
yeah.
yeah,
Glenn says, which Big Ten away game in 2024 do we most want to attend? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's Penn State.
Penn State.
Penn
Yeah.
State's the big one. We got a couple messages from LA Fred. These are so good that I don't want to not give them enough time. So there's three of them. We're gonna use one and save the rest
Okay.
for next week because I want to put a lot of time into this.
Okay.
LA Fred says, what talent do you wish you had been born with that you weren't?
I wish I was musically gifted.
Hmm.
Whether
Okay.
I really, I wish that I could sing. Now, part of me suspects, because my mom can sing, um, is it's just like a training situation issue for
Sure.
me. Like, I can't keep a tune. I really wish I could, because I love
Just hit a tuning fork and match it.
if I could play the guitar or play the piano and sing, play the violin, play the fiddle, play something and sing, I all of those things, because I love music. I
How good are we talking?
love music.
Like,
I sing along in the car and feel bad because I don't want to disrupt other people's enjoyment of the music, but I love to sing and I love to experience music. And I think part of me wishes that I could create music as well, but I've just never I don't think I have that talent.
like
So
you want the talent to be in a band, or do you want the talent just to
no, I
enjoy?
wanna be a musician. No, okay, you look at freaking, there's people out there who are just musicians. Every little like the instruments, singing, anything, songwriting, all of it, they do it all, and, like, I wish I was one of those people.
What talent do I wish I had been born with? The ability to. I know this is lame, but the ability to throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, I mean, that would be
Like it's not that difficult.
would be nice, yeah,
That's what I want.
yeah,
If that would have certainly changed things in life. Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
The have that would have been everything.
The talent to be able to focus on a task, without, I don't know. There's a lot of talents that I wish
The
I
talent
had.
to not procrastinate in life.
Yeah, the talent to not be a procrastinator, the talent to not be anxious about everything. The talent to be able to wash the dishes on a daily basis and not have the sink fill up.
Oh man,
Whatever goes into that would be, yeah.
wouldn't it be awesome to be like a type A?
Wouldn't it be awesome to be, like, clean, like, to be a clean freak, to, like, insist on everything being clean instead of just, like, being anxious about things not being clean all the time, but, like, somebody who actually would just go out and actually clean things and not have it be like nails on a chalkboard to be
Uh,
doing it.
we
Yeah.
have a guest, a current guest on the
Yeah.
pod. Um,
Somebody's ready to go outside.
it's
Yeah.
if you're listening at home, Jesse, our dog, joins us in the studio now. And first of all, she was chewing on a bone earlier. Then
Yeah.
take that away. Secondly, now she is thoroughly vocalizing that it's dinner time and uh, downtime. So that's the end of the pod. I think it's time to go deal with our special guest.
Yes.
So, all right, guys, we'll be back next week. Again, it will be the first episode of the new season. It's going to be the off-season recap. We talk about really set the stage for what's going down in 2023. So we will be back with you guys next week. We're super pumped for it. As always, if you've made it this far, make sure you do like the stream and subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Until then, see ya.
See ya.